Joel, what is the deal with people getting so easily offended these days? I mean, how thin has our skin gotten so that everybody is just so easily offended? What's going on here?
Honestly, I feel like we've regressed. The old saying that you and I knew, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will.
Never hurt me.
We think words hurt us. And there's a difference between being offended and being harmed. Words don't break my bones. They don't cause bruises. I don't wake up in the morning with purple splotches on my body. What's happening is all psychological, and we need to admit that this is just a psychological experience. I think about the Olympics, well, when they did their opening ceremony and how Christians were
Yeah.
up in arms. Man, they were so offended. Oh, I have to protect my beliefs. I have to defend what I stand for. And there were so many assumptions. And I made a post on Facebook, and I basically started it out like, is it weird for me as a former pastor to have uh, zero negative feelings about this parody of the Da Vinci Code? And I posted a little bit more of like, hey, Jesus was loving in the face of mockery, so why are we so offended? And as it turned out, we found out that it wasn't even a reference to Da Vinci's painting, which was a reference to the Last Supper. Like, we could even call Da Vinci's painting. Uh, we could be offended by that, but what we see, it was a reference to Bacchus. It wasn't even correct. It was a depiction of the god Bacchus, and I remember posting that and going like, what's going to happen? And I got 99 comments, which is
Jeez.
more than I think I've ever gotten. And I think what we're seeing here is, with social media, there is a platform for our egos to express ourselves.
Yeah, and this is something that you've talked about quite a bit as far as the ego being offended. So talk to me about, what does it mean to be offended? What does it mean to take offense at something?
This goes back to one of my favorite spiritual teachers of the century. That's Richard Rohr, says only the ego can be offended. He refers a lot to Thomas Merton, who talks about that as well. But what's happening, I think, is our brain is taking an emotion that most of us are pretty blind to, and we're adding our stories to it. We're combining a feeling and a story. Now, a feeling is like anger. A feeling is like confusion. A feeling is like fear. Those are feelings. But this book that I've recently read, or like have been thumbing through, is Say What You Mean, a mindful approach to nonviolent communication. There's this part in there where they talk about this, like the separations, like what are actual feelings and what are stories that we come up with. And they have a list. This is the author of Orange J. Software. He says there's a list of what he calls false feeling words. And these are words that we would say like disrespected, provoked, rejected, taken advantage of. Oh, I feel unsupported. But these actually are not words that mean feelings. They're words that are judgments. They are blamey words. He says, referring to an emotion by blaming the other person, we assume their intent. Oh, that's the person that cuts us off on the highway. We assume that they're an asshole, rather than maybe there's something else going on there. And I would add to his list in terms of blaming others, offended. Oh, they're trying to make me feel this way. Is that what the Bacchus representation of the Olympics were trying to do? That's what Paris was trying to do, offend American Christians. Oh, let's really poke them with a stick, or there's something completely different going on there.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I sometimes too, I think that people say things of being like a discussion or having a debate, and someone will say something, and that person will say, "Oh, well, that I find that really offensive. That's really offensive." And I would think, well, you haven't refuted their point by saying it. Now, it's valid to say to that person, "Hey, I feel angry about what you said, or I feel that makes me sad. I disagree with you about it." Now, maybe I'm wrong And maybe you're right, but I do disagree, and it also makes me angry. But a lot of times people just cop out, and like you said, we got to sharpen up our language here. Like it's not the best thing to say, "Oh, I feel offended," or "I'm really offended by that." Let's be more specific. So talk to me, Joel, about like when we quote unquote feel offended, which is really like another way of saying I feel angry and I disagree with you. When that moment happens to people, to all of us, what's your suggestion for how to handle that situation?
I love that. And I love that you're talking about getting more precise with our
Yeah.
language. This goes back to one of our podcasts on the four agreements. Be impeccable with your word. Like, let your words really mean what you
Yes.
intend to mean. And I've been trying to remove the word disagree from my language, because if I add some humility to it, really what's happening is I see it a different way. It's not that I disagree. There may be more data that would make me agree with you. I just don't have that data yet. And so my first recommendation would be reason with yourself. Like, you can reason with yourself and go like, is this a big deal to me? I have these feelings. They're very big. They're very large. I want to react to them. I want to attack the person who feels like they're attacking me. But reason with yourself. Is this a big deal, and why? Why are you so worked up, Joel? And the second thing is assume positive intent. It's that person cutting you off from the highway. You think they're an asshole, but reason with yourself. What if their intent is actually quite positive and they just didn't see me because they're rushing to the hospital to be with their parent who's dying? If we assumed that that was their intent,
Hmm.
we would feel way less offended. And the truth is, we don't know if either is accurate, and we probably won't ever know because they're racing off. Another way is to practice detachment from these feelings. They're happening, but they aren't who I am.
Hmm.
Lots of people believe things that we don't agree with. Just span the globe, and that's what's happening. And I would say that you have agency. That's the big thing. Choose. You get to choose what you feel.
Hmm.
What is your goal? To be right or to get to a right outcome? That is the bottom line for me. There's a difference between loving truth and feeling superior. And when people, quote unquote, are feeling offended, they're choosing superiority. My views, my feelings are above yours. They're right. And therefore, you've offended me.
Words of wisdom. Words of wisdom from Joel.